It was just another normal afternoon when Barron Trump walked into a small local supermarket. The store had always been a quiet, calm place where customers came and went without much fuss. Barron was only there for a few simple things: a snack, a drink, maybe some bread. But from the moment he stepped inside, there was something in the air that felt off. As he walked down the aisles, a strange, heavy feeling settled on him, like the world around him was holding its breath. Barron didn't let it bother him too much. He picked out his items and made his way to the checkout counter. As he walked past, he noticed the cashier, a young woman named Kelly. She was standing behind the counter, staring at him with wide eyes. When their eyes met, Kelly quickly looked away, her face flushing a deep red. Barron felt a chill run through him. Something was definitely wrong, but he didn't know what. He continued to the counter, but Kelly still wasn't looking at him. She seemed to be busy with something under the counter, her hands moving quickly but awkwardly. Barron tried to shake off the uneasy feeling as he put his items down, but Kelly's nervous energy was palpable. Something was happening, something that Barron couldn't yet understand. As Barron stood there, waiting for Kelly to ring up his items, he noticed her staring at him once more. This time her gaze was more intense, more focused. It felt as if she was trying to figure something out, or maybe it was something else entirely. Her hands were trembling as she scanned the items, and Barron's unease grew. Why was she acting like this? Barron didn't want to jump to conclusions, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Kelly quickly handed him the receipt without making eye contact and barely said a word. Barron felt a bit awkward. Usually cashiers were friendly, making small talk as they checked out customers, but this was different. Just as Barron grabbed his bag, he heard something. A soft click followed by a low whirring sound. He turned quickly, his eyes darting toward the front door. The store's automatic sliding doors slammed shut with a heavy thud. The hairs on the back of Barron's neck stood on end. What was going on? The store was locked. He looked back at Kelly, but she was still standing behind the counter, her face pale. She didn't seem surprised at all by the door's sudden closure. In fact, she looked almost relieved. Barron's heart raced. Something wasn't right. Barron's mind was spinning. Locked in? Why? He quickly glanced toward the back of the store, but there were no other customers around, just Kelly and him. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Barron walked toward the door, testing it. Locked. No way out. He turned to face the cashier. "What's going on?" Barron asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Kelly looked up, her face frozen in fear. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. The silence was unbearable. It was as if time had slowed down. Then, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the back of the store. Barron's eyes shot to the entrance as two police officers stepped inside. Their uniforms were sharp, and their expressions unreadable. One of the officers, a tall man with a no-nonsense attitude, locked eyes with Barron. Without any introduction, the officer spoke, his voice firm and accusing. "You there. Are you the one who robbed this store earlier today?" The officer's words hit Barron like a ton of bricks. "Robbed? What do you mean?" The officer continued, his eyes narrowing. "You were seen in a black hoodie, just like the robber, the man who held up the store earlier. Before you walked into the store, there was an actual robbery. It was quick, almost clean. The suspect, dressed in a black hoodie, stormed into the store, threatened the cashier, and made off with a large sum of money. We got a report about it shortly after, and the suspect managed to slip away before anyone could stop him." Barron felt a knot in his stomach. "What happened to the guy? Did you catch him?" The officer shook his head. "No, the robber got away. There were a few blurry security camera images, but nothing concrete. All we knew was that he was wearing the same black hoodie you were. And the timing? It was too much of a coincidence." "Are you going to deny it?" "I've just walked in," Barron said calmly. "I didn't rob anything. I'm not the person you're looking for." The officers didn't seem convinced. Without another word, the first officer moved toward him, his hand reaching for the cuffs. Barron felt his heart race. He hadn't done anything wrong, but the situation was spiraling out of control. Just as the officers were about to escort him outside, another figure entered the store. A third police officer, a tall man with a grim expression, looked directly at Barron and stopped in his tracks. "Wait," the new officer said. "That's Barron Trump." The two officers stopped in their tracks. They looked at each other, confusion flooding their faces. "Who?" one officer asked, his voice full of disbelief. The third officer took a step closer to Barron. "I know him. That's Barron Trump. You've got the wrong guy," he said firmly, his voice calm but filled with authority. The two officers, who had been so certain of their accusation, exchanged unsure glances. They looked back at Barron, their grip on him loosening. "Wait, really?" one of them asked, his voice cracking. The third officer nodded, his expression softening. "Yes." For a moment there was complete silence. Then the officers released their grip on Barron. The first officer muttered an apology, looking embarrassed. "We're sorry, sir," he said, his voice sheepish. Barron nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened. Barron rubbed his wrists where the handcuffs had been, still trying to shake off the disorienting feeling of being falsely accused. He looked at Kelly, still standing behind the counter, her face pale with fear. She was trembling, her hands fidgeting at her sides. She hadn't said a word. Barron took a deep breath and walked toward her. Kelly was still looking at him, her eyes wide, filled with guilt. "I'm really sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Barron smiled, trying to calm her down. "It's okay. You didn't know. This wasn't your fault." He placed a few bills on the counter and smiled again. "Take this. For your trouble," he said, his tone warm and understanding. Kelly looked down at the money in disbelief. She hadn't expected Barron to be so calm, so generous after everything that had happened. She took the money, still speechless, and Barron walked out of the store, the door sliding open as he left. But as he stepped out into the fresh air, Barron couldn't help but wonder what was going on. There was more to this story than just a mix-up. Kelly's strange behavior, something didn't add up, and Barron was determined to find out what. Days passed, and the incident at the store began to fade from Barron's mind. Until one morning, he opened his phone and saw it. The video. The footage from the store's security cameras had gone viral. People were talking about it everywhere, on social media, news outlets, even in memes. The video of Barron being arrested, calm and collected despite being falsely accused, had captured everyone's attention. The hashtag #BarronTheCalm was trending worldwide, and people couldn't get enough of it. People admired his ability to stay calm, his kindness toward Kelly, and the way he had been wrongfully arrested without losing his composure. But for Barron, the praise didn't matter. He was still haunted by the events in the store, especially Kelly's odd behavior. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than anyone realized. Barron began to dig deeper. He spent hours researching, trying to find out more about the store, Kelly, and the robbery. The news stories only added to his confusion. There was no mention of the robbery he had been accused of, no description of the suspect, and no follow-up. It was as if everything had been swept under the rug. Weeks passed as Barron, with the help of the police officer who had recognized him, dug deeper into the strange events surrounding the supermarket robbery. Every day, the investigation revealed more pieces of the puzzle, but they all seemed to point in the same direction, a direction Barron had never expected. One afternoon, the officer who had been guiding him through the investigation called Barron. "We've got the full story now," the officer said, his voice low. "You were right. This whole thing wasn't just a random mistake." Barron's stomach tightened with anticipation. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to steady his breathing. The officer paused, then exhaled slowly. It was Kelly. She knew the robber. Her boyfriend was the one who held up the store. Barron's eyes widened in shock. Her boyfriend? How is that possible? Why would she do this? The officer continued, his expression serious. Kelly's boyfriend, a man named Alex, had been planning the robbery for weeks. They wanted to steal money from the store, but they also needed a way to throw off suspicion. So when you walked in wearing the same black hoodie as Alex had worn during the robbery, Kelly saw an opportunity. She panicked, thinking she could pin it on you. Barron felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. But why me? Why would she try to frame me? The officer looked Barron in the eye, his voice solemn. Kelly had no idea who you were. She didn't know you were the son of Donald Trump. She just saw a man in a black hoodie and thought it was her chance to cover up for her boyfriend. She acted out of fear, not realizing the magnitude of what she was doing. The truth hit Barron like a ton of bricks. Kelly had tried to ruin his life simply because of a coincidence, a shared wardrobe choice between him and a criminal. And now, everything made sense. Kelly's nervous behavior, her quick decision to lock the store, her desire to blame Barron, it was all a distraction. But now, thanks to the investigation, her plan had failed. The officer nodded grimly. It was all a setup. Kelly and her boyfriend had orchestrated the robbery together. Barron felt a mixture of relief and anger. He was relieved that the truth had finally come out, but angry that he had been dragged into such a mess. So what happens now? The officer sighed. Kelly and Alex were arrested. They're both facing robbery charges, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. They'll be going to trial soon.